thank you. We're going into the lessons learned next. So thank you, everybody who attended this meeting. And if please stay on board if you're able to. The lessons learned was really great last month. Too, we talked about a lot of things. So I'm going to let Glennis take over. You're muted. You're muted, Glennis.
There
you go.
Hi, everybody. How's it going?
Good.
Great.
So today on our agenda, we are talking about policy of drug testing and discharge, and some of the things that the different things that people do and the different policies they have and how they actually, what's the process for discharge upon a positive drug test, because everybody's different. So I thought we could share what we do within our own recovery homes and see if we can't help others to redevelop or look at theirs or share theirs with others who may need it, and get us kind of on the same page with that, because there's a lot of discrepancy in how people utilize that or how they implement that policy. So anybody want to start off on their policy for a positive drug screen, and when do you take them and how often do you take them, and are they
I'll
random?
start off for a minute, just because we put something out. Kayla put something out last month and said, hey, this meeting's for you guys too. What subjects would you like to discuss? And what Glennis just brought up is one of the subjects that a couple operators said that they really wanted to talk about. So, sorry, go ahead.
No, it's fine. Anybody like to share their policies that might benefit others?
Hi, everyone. I'm Jason. I'm the owner of Nathan's House.
Jason.
We've actually had a lot of experience with this lately. I don't know. I think the sun came out in the warm weather, and we've just had a rash of relapses. So we actually lost 7 guys within probably the last 3 weeks, which is historic for our program.
Yeah.
So the typical policy for me is guys are being tested with a 16-panel urine screen at least once a week. Our house managers and myself complete those. We track them. We keep a record, of the results. Typically, before I give a guy a test, I'll ask him, this is a 16-panel drug test. It tests for everything, including synthetics like kratom or spice. Is there anything you want to tell me before I give you this test? And that gives them an opportunity to be honest with me, because I find that, if a guy who has relapsed comes to me before I have to chase him around to figure out whether or not he's relapsed, that says a lot about where they want to go. If they are honest with me, if they come forward and are straight, then we'll help them try and get into detox if needed, and further on to treatment. Because I find that if somebody's relapsed or they're doing drugs inside of a recovery house, they need a little bit more help than we can give them, right? We don't have the support staff on site for counseling and that type of stuff. So I think it's important that they try and get a little bit more recovery training before they come back. We will hold a bed for them. So if they relapse and they go away for 3 months, I will hold a bed for them. I won't make them pay shared living expense or anything while they're gone, but I will make that commitment to them that if they complete the program or, complete a program, then they're allowed to come back. On the opposite side, if I have to chase them around, if I know or have a suspicion that they're using, or if I catch them using fake urine on a test or whatever, then my policy is to exit them from the house. And typically what I do is I have their $200 sobriety deposit, and I'll let them know, listen, I'll be more than happy, you collect your things right now. I'll be more than happy to give you your sobriety deposit back, or we can use that to get a hotel room for you for a night or a bus ticket. So your choice. Or I can
That's a great idea.
I can move your stuff out and you get nothing. And I'll put it on the side of the road. So typically 99% of the time, they're like, I'll get my stuff and I'll take a hotel room. So we have a couple of hotel hotels in the area that are pretty inexpensive. Usually about $100 a night. When I go, I'll pay for it on my credit card, but I'll tell the person that I'm, getting the room for that, incidentals, if they make phone calls or watch movies or anything like that, it's on them. And I tell the person at the hotel who's collecting my information that I will not be funding more than just this day. So, and that's worked out. That's worked out well. I think it's important if a guy has relapsed to get them out of the house. It's part of our safety. Nobody wants to be around a guy who's tweaking or coming down off methamphetamines or opiates or smells like alcohol. So just as a safety standards, just to get them out of the house immediately. So, for the most part, if they're willing to go and get more help, then we're going to reward that behavior with a spot for them in the house. So, because it's important, right? Like they've come into the house, they've been there a while, they've added to the harmony, to the strength and the culture of the house. And we want to make sure that they come back because, these guys are like, they're like brothers to each other, and having a relapse in the house it can be a very hard thing. It can have a really strong effect, both positively and negatively on the entire house. So,
Can I ask a couple questions?
sure.
Nathan, where are you located?
We're in Boyne City. My name's Jason, and I own Nathan's house.
Oh,
Yeah.
Boyne City?
Boyne City, Michigan. Yeah.
So you're way up there. And
Way up there.
how many, region 1 or region 2 for your PI?
Region 2.
Region 2.
Region 2. Yeah.
Okay. So my question is, one, I'm very curious about, and Catherine said it's a good idea, and then I questioned that, but I'm curious about it. When you give them $200 when they relapse to walk out the door with, and what if they go buy opioids and overdose and
Right.
that night? I mean, so that is something I'm curious about, and on doing that. The other thing I'm really curious, how many beds do you have?
We have 30 beds.
30 beds, dude. I'm telling you, and you pay for people's stay. But you'll pay for their bed, so that's probably if you say for 2
Very
months.
generous, very generous.
I mean,
Yeah.
how do you pay that? I'm very
Well,
curious.
what I don't do is I don't collect a fee from them, and I leave that bed open, right? Because they've already gone through the process, the onboarding process, the interviewing process with me. They've gotten to know the guys in the house. They probably have a job. They've established themselves in the recovery community. They may have a service position. So I think in my experience, it's easier for that guy to come back, reintegrate himself back into the community, as opposed to me going out and recruiting to find another guy for that bed, right?
And
Because the recruiting, it takes a while.
Have you done an analysis on how many times people have come back or haven't come back, and you saved the bed for 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, and lost bed money for 3 months?
Yeah.
How many people have not come? I mean, just curious if you've run the numbers and analysis on how much you've lost.
I've never really tracked it, but
yeah,
from my experience, if it works, then I keep doing it. If it doesn't work, then I don't do it. Right. So if I found that I held a bed for 3 months or a month or whatever for a guy and he doesn't come back, then I wouldn't do it anymore. But I find that, they come back, they have a better resolve about what they need to do. It shows the other guys in the house that, hey, sometimes relapse is part of recovery, and that if I'm willing to be honest about it, and I really find since we've upped giving tests more frequently, the rate of somebody coming to me and being honest before I even have to mention a test has gone up dramatically, because they know they're going to get a test. They know that's, there's going to be that accountability. And so they find, if I'm honest with Jason, there's going to be a consequence. And when they do come back, there are consequences. They have to start back on the top bunk. They have to start, cleaning the bathrooms. They have to, they're mandated now to go to 7 meetings a week instead of 5. They have to definitely have a service position, whether, they're making coffee for the groups or chairing meetings or whatever. So.
And
one thing I agreed with that I really like when I said it's a good idea. Not all operators charge a deposit. Like you charge a sobriety deposit. And when it came to what you were saying, they had the
Yeah.
choice. They can use their sobriety deposit and I'll buy you a bus ticket with it, or we can use that you can get a hotel for the night.
Yep.
That way I'm thinking, well, it's not the money coming out of the operator's pocket,
Right. Yeah.
that way too. And it's a plan because we're supposed to have plans, right? When somebody comes in, what's the exit strategy? Because
Yeah.
like I said, sometimes relapse is part of a
Yeah.
journey, not always, but got to
Yeah.
plan ahead. If this happens, what are you going to do? But
And I've
having that
started to
sobriety
implement that
deposit,
off of your suggestion.
yeah,
Now, when I'm interviewing a gentleman to come to the house, I ask them, do they have any family members? If in the event there was an emergency or you were to relapse, is there somebody that I could call? And then we have a form where they complete that. Because I think that's a really good suggestion, because the one thing we don't want to get into, because I saw this happen with a local recovery house, a guy relapsed and he was like, you can't kick me out, blah, 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 you know, and the
yeah,
guy, and they had a hard time getting him out of the house. And so the guy's basically smoking meth, in the recovery house because they can't get him out. And
yeah,
so I find it's just better to get them out of
Mhm.
as soon as possible. I've heard of
yeah,
other places doing like a man down, they keep a bed just in case, like they call it the man down bed, and that person will sleep there in the recovery community or in the recovery house. I gotta let the dog out. Hold on. Go ahead.
well, there
Jason,
wasn't, so
how
what I did when I ran homes is we did the same thing. We questioned them, just say, hey, I'm going to be dropping you. Is there anything you want to share with me?
Mhm.
And I'm going to say ahead of time, if you're honest with me, I'll work with you.
Yeah.
But if you're not and you test
Yeah.
positive, I'm just going to tell you pack your crap and go. Does that make
Yeah.
sense? Yeah. So anything you want to tell me.
Yeah.
And a lot of times they would come clean and I wouldn't have to drop them. Yeah, you're right. I use blah, blah, blah. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for being honest. I need you to pack your stuff and you need to move on. We drop them off at wherever and you can come back in 3 days as long as you test clean. You can come back, and we would
Mhm.
hold that bed for that individual.
Yeah.
I'm hoping that they would come back, and probably good 80% of the time they came back and they tested clean, and it was fine.
Yeah.
But it's so important. We tell the residents when they come in, you protect your sobriety and you protect this home. You're going to be
Yeah.
friends sometimes with people, your bunkmate, and there's no such things as secrets in a recovery home. So you can't say, well, I don't want to snitch on my friend. No, you could be saving their life. So
Right.
by speaking up, you may be helping them to get the help that they need. So they, and you're protecting your home.
Yeah.
So there's no
So,
one way to do it, but being firm
yeah,
and direct, I like what you did. You can't allow them to stay.
right.
No. No, it's
How,
dangerous because they could detox and die, especially alcohol. If they detox in your home on alcohol, 51% of all people who detox off alcohol by themselves die.
yeah,
And that's,
yeah.
we don't
More
want
than
people
any
to.
more than
How,
any of the other drugs put together.
Yep.
how long have you been doing this, Jason, up in Boyne City?
Going on my 8th year, coming up soon
Eighth
on
year.
my 8th
Okay.
year. Yep.
All right. Anybody else want to share their policies and drug testing and discharge? I don't know how many are on here because I can't really see.
Carl Williams. Oh, you don't have your camera on? I'm going to call on you. Second chance recovery. Put your camera on. What's your policy? Ah, there you are. You're muted. There you
Good
go.
afternoon,
Hi,
everyone.
Carl.
Great.
What's your
Our
policy
policy,
for drug testing?
well, we randomly test uh, when we suspect, and if a person has used, which it's not really hard to spot that if they're using, we suggest that we suggest that they call the 1-800 number, which is the local agency where they can get back into treatment immediately. And we haven't had any problems with that. They're willing to go back into treatment. We'll hold a bed for them up until their discharge, which is normally 29 days. Um, and we'll welcome them back. And that's been working for us. We just had a client that was discharged. He called me and he wants to come back, and he'll be uh, discharged from treatment real soon. So we'll accept him back. So
What,
that's our policy.
what area are you in?
We're in Detroit.
Detroit.
Hmm.
So, so you have a random drug test,
Yes.
and if they it's a positive test, then you have them call the local treatment 800 number, and generally they get in. What happens if they don't get in? What happens if they don't want to call?
Well, if they don't want to call, we suggest that they go to a shelter. That's their next alternative.
But they have to leave immediately?
Yes, yes, because that will infect the whole home.
Mhm. Okay.
Yeah, that infects the whole home. And it
So
can get
Jason,
violent. It can get violent. Um, it just makes everybody uncomfortable.
so
Mhm.
Jason brought up, there have been situations with other operators where a resident will dig his feet in and say, I'm not going anywhere. You want to exit me? Kick me out, evict me. And there are situations, unfortunately, especially if you don't have a good rapport with your local police station and stuff, and having those relationships is really important. So when somebody's in that situation, they need to leave, you can call and they will say, if I have to come back, you're going to be trespassing, and then I'm taking you to jail. So to have those kind of relationships is important. But how many on here have gone through that? Have any of you gone through that where somebody refused to leave and you had to go through the eviction process?
No, not me. I've had people want to refuse to leave, but then when the staff said they were going to call me, they changed their mind and decided to leave because they didn't want to see me coming. But I also tell them you can stay if you want, but we're going to call the police. So just so know that because we have to provide safety net for everybody in this house. So you are not safe right now, so we're going to need to call the police, and pretty much they leave at that point.
Yeah. And I've had it too where somebody didn't want to go and they weren't going to pack their stuff, and I grab a trash bag, say, do
Mhm.
you want me to pack your stuff or do you want to pack your stuff? And I just start loading it up. Okay, I'll do it. And so they leave reluctantly, but several years I ran recovery homes with Kevin, never had a situation where they didn't leave. So, but there's nothing at this point right now to protect an operator from tenant landlord laws. So anybody could just dig their heels in and say, I'm not going. So the one thing you can do to help protect yourself is to ensure that all of your intake paper, anything they sign, nothing in your documents say anything
That's
about a
right.
rent or a
Yeah.
lease, or they're your landlord or anything like that. Receipts, all the way down to your receipts. When you give somebody a receipt for payment, a lot of receipts that you get are like Office Max. They say for rent or lease, draw a line through that. It's program fees. You're a
Yep.
program of enrollment, and those are program fees. So if
Yep.
you do have anything that says rent or lease,
Get rid of it.
you bound yourself. Yeah, get rid of it.
Having said all of that, I know Building Men for Life, which has over 100 beds. Once in the last 10 years that I've been around here, so it's like 1 out of 1,000. But somebody dug their feet in, and they were advised by a local lawyer getting them some work comp stuff. And so that person stayed in there, basically shut down the house. But if you go to your lawyer, what your lawyer will tell you, if you forcibly evict somebody and the court says, oh, you were subject to the landlord tenant laws, then they can sue you for what's called forcible detainer, and they get 3 times actual damages plus a reasonable attorney's fees.
Mhm.
So there's a big monetary risk involved. So it's like
Yeah.
it's you save a ton of money if you spend time at the start to make sure that your documents don't smell, walk, talk, or look like a duck. And my
Yep.
duck is going to be a lease, right?
Yep.
These are all program fees, and this is all done under a Mars certified recovery residence. And you wanted to make it look and smell like I'm staying in a hotel that has some services
Right.
with it.
Yeah, they end up having to move everybody out of their home. And that person was left in the home for 30 days until they could get them evicted. So, yeah. don't want to put yourself in that
Has that
situation.
happened? Has anybody else experienced that that's on here? That would be nice to know. Let's see. How about Lena? Is it Lena?
Has anybody talked to their local county prosecutor about this stuff?
Mhm.
Lena at Live Right,
Yeah.
see your face.
Or Rebecca. Is Rebecca there?
Rebecca Sharp.
I can tell you that we've had close calls. However, I'm pretty persistent, patient, and demanding
Mhm.
that they vacate the premises immediately, before there will be police involvement. And that our goal is to avoid any potential charges that could come to the individual. Um, I remember I had a male who was not willing to leave. And he was like, well, you have to go through the eviction process of 30 days. And I just pulled out, we keep a copy of all of our rules and regulations at the house. So I pulled out a copy of the rules and regulations that says in the event of a discharge or at the event of a relapse, you will be discharged. And read that to him. And he's like, well, I'm not leaving. Your drug test is faulty. And
Mhm.
I'm like, well, if that's the route you want to go, we can do an investigation. And I come from a very big recovery community that has a nice amount of resources that are starting to be taken away. But we have a nice amount of recovery resources, so we are able to help tell the individual, hey, go to our engagement center. Like, this is a nice soft landing. We can investigate what's going on, determine if we are really going to discharge you or not. Or, we'll ask the individual, can you go with your sponsor for a day or two so that we can also do an investigation? So then it's not indefinite and it gives them a chance to comply, and possibly be able to come back. So it also gives them that choice of what they're able to do. But there's like a multi-factor of things that
You bring up a good point though, because there are faulty tests. Has anybody experienced that? Because that does happen. And then there's
There's
been,
false positives. Yeah,
yes,
there's some medications
yeah,
that will give you a positive for like cocaine. I think there's a couple antibiotics
Yeah.
that I think it's penicillin, and I'm not sure. There's a couple different things.
Amoxicillin.
yeah.
Amoxicillin will
Yep.
give you a false positive. So if you do, and they're like, no, I didn't use, you can say, let me see your prescriptions that you're on. And then they should actually have, well, here I'm on amoxicillin or whatever. There's also, I think, an antidepressant that can also give you a false positive. So knowing what your individuals are on, is it Wellbutrin? Somebody wrote the healing place, Wellbutrin. But
Yeah,
so there may be, maybe they didn't use they test a positive. But obviously, if they're under the influence and they're
Right.
slurring their speech or
Right.
they're, it doesn't matter if it tests negative or not. They're presenting like they're under the influence, which isn't good for your home.
No.
One medication that will do that is like the trazodone. Seemed like everybody came in on trazodone, so we had to have a rule where when you take your trazodone, you retire for the evening. You go to your room. You can't be cooking in the kitchen and nodding out on on the couch while you're watching TV. If you're on trazodone, you need to take it and then retire to your room for the evening.
And I don't think we always want to because if we say, I mean, yes, you're right. If it's obvious, it's obvious, but there's some drugs that are masked a little bit better and it's harder to see that. But then there is time when, and I, for the many years I've been doing this, I can usually tell if somebody's lying to me. I mean, after 30 years of doing this, you can see it, you know what I mean? But there have been times that I've thought, oh, I could be wrong about this, because they're so adamant that they're not using. And some have actually, in the early years, there was some that fooled me. Later, I don't want to accuse somebody of lying who's come into recovery if they're that, because this is what they've gotten their whole life. And so I'm like, let's see if we can give you a 24-hour stay somewhere, do the drug testing, and let's see if you're right about this, because I'm willing to go down this road with you for a day until we can do the research on this. And there have been times where we've been wrong because of the false positive thing. So we can't rule that out. And I think a lot of times that does need to be retested. We have a program in Washtenaw County at the sheriff's department where they do drug testing, and we can send them up there for it. It costs money, but we can send them up there for it. And we do that just to make sure, because ours is a 16 panel, but you just never know. And I don't regret that at all, because there's been people who are like, I'm sorry, I apologize. It would look like it was a positive drug screen, and we needed to do our due diligence. So, but I think, has anybody had somebody come back and it was negative after they've tested? The second time, I should say.
Yeah, I did actually. How we handle that when if they're adamant about not using and it might be a false positive, first thing we do is, okay, what medications are you on? And
Yep.
then I can go and research to see if that causes a false positive. What I've started to do is basis, which is a community recovery organization in Charlevoix. They do testing there, and then they supply me with the scientific readout into like nanograms of how much is in their
Yep.
secreting in their creatine. So I can say, okay, here we're going to get you a test. If you're adamant, we're going to get this baseline test, and then I'm going to give you another test. And if these levels aren't going down, then I know you're obviously lying to me.
Yeah. Yep. Ooh, we
So
learned so much, don't we?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I would like to just add if that's okay.
Please.
Yeah, I
Who's
just
this
wanted to
talking?
share. Excuse me?
Talking? Who's talking? Who's speaking?
This is Dr.
Oh,
Shante with the
Dr.
Healing
Okay.
Palace, Inc.
Hi.
Hello, everyone. This is my first time on. I'm new to the recovery resident space, but now that we're talking about medications, I am a PhD psychiatric mental health nurse practitioner, and I just wanted to let you all know this may be new information for some and maybe not so new, but I work in the prison and jail space part-time. Wellbutrin is a medication that people specifically who've had stimulant use or cocaine use disorder, that they can use that medication and break it down and snort it. So
mhm.
just keep that in mind, that if you have people that are on Wellbutrin, which it really is a good med for people that have anxiety and depression, and even can help with ADHD. So it can be a good med, but it also can be used as it like they're snorting cocaine. And it can show up sometimes on tests as if it's an amphetamine. So just keep that in mind when we're looking at medications, that people can snort that.
Okay.
Thank
Good
you, Doctor.
information.
Yeah, good information.
That reminds me of, like, because you would not have that in a drug test, but I remember during COVID, there was a point, time, and period where mail order drugs were a thing. And it did not cover anything in our 16 panel because they were drugs from China, banned here, but they were able to get them mail ordered somehow through Amazon. Um, and I remember trying to debate, like, is this something that we're going to discharge them for? So, like, if you're, crushing up your, Wellbutrin and snorting it, I'm discharging you. That is addict, behavior,
Behavior.
unfortunately. And there's something that is deeper that needs to be addressed. But it just sparked my memory on the mail order drugs and kind of the difficulties of trying to navigate that, because nothing came up on a drug test.
Yeah.
But they were still under the influence, and it was affecting the remainder of the house. So, yeah.
I don't know how many of you have dealt with Robitussin,
Mm.
but you also want to be careful with that as well. There's actually a separate test that you can get for Robitussin. We're getting into the spring soon, but there's a lot of colds, a lot of stuff going around, and people want to bring cold medicine into the home. A lot of the liquid medications, including Tylenol with cold, can have alcohol in it. So make sure you look at that. I would discourage anybody bringing liquid medication into the home. They could have capsules or something, but Robitussin, people have gone really psychotic with
Oh,
that,
yeah.
and
Yeah.
a lot of delirium going on, and you're like, what in the world? You drop them and they test negative. Well, it was Robitussin. So that's something you don't want in your home, especially
Right.
either.
And I know it's hard to believe, but early on, we had a problem with vanilla extract in our women's house. I mean,
We
one
don't think
woman,
about
there were
extract.
so many bottles of vanilla extract in that room. I could not believe it. And I mean, then we just not allowed in the home. I mean, it's just not allowed in the homes, baking or not, you can't use vanilla extract. But I mean,
Well,
that's
no one needs their own personal bottle of vanilla
no, and that, I
extract.
mean, that actually, I mean, we kind of chuckle about some of these things that happen, but they do happen. I tell all the operators, you say, well, that hasn't happened to us yet. Never say never, because things happen. I mean, we had somebody die outside, he hung himself outside one of our facilities. That would have never, I mean, only one person ever died on our watch, and that was one of them. Who would have ever thought that would have happened? Like we really can't say, I don't need to change that policy because that's never happened to me. Yeah, it can happen to us, so I mean, I think that's one of the most important things that we are, is that when we share things with one another, we take them very seriously, and not use the, well, not me and not my place, mentality, because yeah, it could be me and my place, and it has been, so I think this is what I love about these things, sharing experience and knowledge and wisdom and, with one another, so that we're not caught in certain situations experiencing some of the things that other people have because we didn't listen. I always say, even as a recovering person, I feel like we've arrived when we can learn from other people's mistakes, and not have to make them ourselves, so that's what I love about this process right here. So I want to thank you all for that. Anybody else want to share about that policy?
Rebecca, you were going to talk earlier, I think. You're muted. You're muted, Rebecca.
Okay.
There you go.
Hello. I had just had heard my name, so I was just trying to respond back to see what you were asking from me, because I didn't have my video on, or my. So I'm new. I just started last week with Latitude with Recovery here in Kalamazoo. And I'm just learning your guys' program. I'm just learning the sober living stuff. So I'm kind of more so just listening right now to some of the things. I have been a certified recovery coach for now since 2018, and I work for my local community mental health services, ISK, in Kalamazoo. So I do have some familiarity with people in recovery, but I'm new with the recovery housing part. So I'm just kind of more listening and kind of seeing what I'm looking forward to having to navigate.
Have you had to
But
drop anybody yet, Rebecca?
no, I haven't yet. Like I said, it's just been this first week, so I'm just now learning the charting system and trying to get everybody's doing the intake process, and going through making sure everybody, all the files are up to date and all the stuff is in compliance. So that's what I've been kind of working on.
Awesome. Well, welcome.
Latitude just changed from Latter Rain, correct?
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
Okay.
So you guys are
So
going through more of transformation process. You opened a couple of homes too, right?
that's right. So she just opened. So she's got two new homes opening up. I think one is I'll be overseeing Abigail's Palace, and then Heather's home. That's the brand new home that's opening up. And then she's got another house and a long-term house. So she is busy, and so she has a lot of changes.
I'm looking forward to seeing everything.
She's a very busy lady. So I'm just
Rebecca.
glad I can catch things up and get things kind of smoothed out right now. So no, I haven't dropped anybody yet. I think she's still taking on some of the majority of the tasks where I'm just doing the intakes and those are steady coming in. Once the treatment centers heard there was openings in a new house, we just got quickly flooded with people
Good, good.
to kind of step back and say, okay, we're at our capacity. And so now I'm just trying to get all their charts and intakes kind of caught up to date and their one-on-ones. And then I facilitate the weekly house meeting and workshops. So I'm doing that right now too.
One recommendation, Rebecca, if you're getting a lot of new people in, it's not always possible, but it's always best practice not to put two new people in the same room together. Because usually
Okay.
the first 30 days can be pretty tough, right? And if they're looking for somebody to, you know, they're just kind of like on the edge, they'll take somebody with them. But putting
Right.
them in with somebody that's seasoned, been there a little while, following the rules, that's usually the better placement. So that way some of the best treatment they're going to get is with the person that they're sharing a room with. So, so if you can avoid it, try not to put two new people in the same room.
All right. Thank you for the tips.
What else, Glennis?
Well, the other thing that we wanted to talk about today, I thought that we could run over if there's any other policies that people have questions about or have struggled with, just that we can even know what they are. There's two things I'd like to really. One is to look at some other policies that maybe people have questions about or they're not sure about and they want to learn about. And then the second thing is to do a further ask on what are some of the topics that people would really like to hear about. One of the things, this was one of them from the email to Kayla, and the other one of the important ones was policy and breaking them down, or I'm sorry, standards and breaking them down, breaking the standards down to a more understandable, level so that we're all on the same page with those. But if I want to talk about the policies maybe that people have questions about, or what are some of the things we'd like to talk about in the next lessons learned. So let's just start with any of the policies. Anybody have any questions on any policies that they have questions about or struggle with?
You know what, and I've been doing this a very long time. I still to this day struggle with discharging someone that hasn't relapsed.
Yeah.
Meaning behavioral aggression, self-sabotage, not keeping up with their space or their recovery, money. That is probably one of the hardest things that I still struggle with to this day. Because you see hope, you see promise. They haven't relapsed. Relapse is a very easy discharge. Honestly, you messed up. Most of the time it's amicable. We all know what's going to happen. It's when you don't have that mutual discharge and you're noticing behaviors that don't fit. So that would be something I would like to hear, of other people is, kind of some of the things that they do, how many chances. I mean, like,
Big
we
one.
write up system, but, no matter what, especially if they're pretty decent, people, you aim, it's hard to be like, well, you get along with everyone, but you're 2 months behind on rent.
Program fees.
Not
Yeah.
rent. Yeah.
Program fees. Sorry, program fees.
But you know what?
I'm
If you're doing that, Demir, if you're allowing that for one individual, then you got to allow it for everybody,
Yeah.
right? So you're allowed this person to be behind. How come you're kicking me out because I'm only a week behind and you let him stay? It can end up being you got to be consistent. And the biggest thing an operator needs to be consistent with is your rules. You have rules in place for a reason. Every rule matters. If you allow people to pick and choose what they want to follow, like I'm not going to make my bed, I'm not going to do my chore, I'm just going to do that. If you allow them to pick and choose what rules they want to follow, it makes all rules seem suspect. So you have to be very strict. I like the idea of, you know what, hey, we got to talk for a minute. Hey, you broke this rule, and we've talked about that before. Now I'm going to have you sign this that you're aware you broke the rule. And if it happens again, this is what's going to have to happen. So Sometimes making an example out of somebody. I mean, if when guys saw me come to our recovery homes, they would just scatter like roaches. They're
I
just,
know, me
you know, they
too.
just take off. Catherine's here. But if somebody didn't
Yep.
make their bed, for example, I'd see, I would totally unmake their bed. I would take it from the bottom and I'd wrap it over their pillow and say, tell Johnny to call me. And then
Mhm.
he'd call me and say, what'd you do to my bed? I'm like, do you like your bed? Do you want to keep your bed?
Mm-hmm.
Because there's a lot of other people out there that will make that bed and follow the rules. A lot of people want that bed. And if I come in again and see you didn't follow this rule, it's the first rule of the day, I'm just going to tell you to pack your crap and go. Does that make sense? You know, it's really important. And yes, I have exited people for not making their bed because I go in again. I have to, don't be full of empty threats. If you say you're going to do something, do it. And that sends a very strong message to the others in the home.
Everybody. Mhm.
Yeah,
Mhm.
I mean, you got to be consistent. It's important. So being consistent with your rules, every rule counts, and treat everybody the same. And
So,
no, don't let them stay there for 2 months and not pay. You know, hey, you've got until next week, Friday, 5 o'clock. Otherwise, just plan to pack your stuff and go. You know what? If they wanted money for drugs and for other things, they always came up with a way, right? So where there's a will, there's a way. Go get it.
so let me play devil's advocate for that, Catherine.
No.
You have a woman
I'm glad you weren't a resident of mine.
You have a woman who's in recovery housing and she loses a job because they find out, even though they tell her it's okay, just fill out the form, we'll hire them. Then they hire her, she gets a job, and then they do the background check, even though she was honest and they said, oh, it'll be okay. They have to fire her. So then she's got to go out and look for another job. The whole time she doesn't have money, but she's going to meetings. She's got a support system. She's got her own recovery path. She's making her bed. She's doing her part in the house. She's doing all that. So she's lost a job. And now
Case by
she goes to,
case.
wait a minute. Yes. Now this is what I'm getting to.
Yep.
Because I had this such woman who it took her 6 months to get a job, but she was doing everything else. She now had, I just kicked her out. She now has 15 years in recovery because we hung in there with her. You know what I mean? So that is that ambivalent, case by case thing, and how you let other people understand your decision making. So I'm a big fan of getting the whole group together and say, what do you would like us to do with this? How do you feel about this? Or talk to them and let the group decide. And generally the group is like, no, she's been doing everything right. And they support that, right? That's one way of doing it. I mean,
but then that's not much different than what Jason was saying. He held a bed. This guy's doing what he needs to do. He's holding that bed for him, not getting paid.
I'm
So,
okay with that.
I'm okay
with that. I just couldn't do it without the money. I couldn't do it without the money. I applaud him.
Yeah.
I think it's a great policy.
A lot of operators don't get funding either.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people out there making it, but they depend on the individual paying in order to pay their lease and pay their mortgage, and they don't have a contract to fall back on. So, I mean, you got a wait list.
Yeah.
I got a wait list of somebody that wants to come in and pay for that bed, and you still got to keep the lights on. So I get it. It is a case by case basis.
Yeah, it is.
But you just have to make sure that you're consistent.
Well, you can't be consistent with a case by case. That's my.
In my mind, you can. No, I know. I get it. But then you're going to have somebody maybe try to sue you. Oh, you let them stay and you kick me out after a week, and maybe they're going to sue for discrimination of some kind. So
it's called documentation.
Yes. Yes.
That's a good question. How many of you document in your program?
Document
in their file. Mm-hmm.
Well, we do every week. We do the weekly check-in forms. So the guys they self-evaluate themselves. And if I see, like, we have a saying, we watch feet, not lips. Right. So if a guy's telling me, oh, I'm doing everything I can, I can't get a job, but every time I come in the house, he's sitting in the couch holding it down for 19 hours.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That to me just says, we're adults here. Number one, we're men. Number two, we're adults, and we're going to act like that.
Yep.
And if you don't want to be part of it, then like you said, I have a waiting list, right? And
Yeah.
I actually, as of late, I ask a guy if he wants to be on our waiting list to get in our house. I ask him to put down a $50 deposit that I'll hold the bed for him when he gets out of treatment.
A good idea.
If they go somewhere else, I'll give them that deposit back. But if I hold a bed for them, they say, yeah, I'm coming after treatment, then I keep the $50, then I call the next guy. But everybody has like these levels of dysfunction that they're
Yeah.
coming from in their life.
Right. Yep.
And some people may not have had the upbringing. Like, for instance, we had a gentleman one time that would not eat anything that wasn't processed or came from McDonald's, because when his mother was in full addiction, she would feed him rotten food. So he didn't trust any food. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
then I have another guy who, he was Ivy League educated, right? So they're coming from different spaces in
Yep.
life, but
Yep.
I always find that if they're putting in the work and putting in the effort, whether it be in the house or finding a job or in their recovery, then that gives them a pass to kind of say, okay, I lost my job. It's going to take me another 2 weeks to find a work, and then it's going to take me another 2 weeks to get a check. I'll work with them as long as I see, they're
process happening.
They're making their bed. They're not sleeping past 9:30. They're not staying out past curfew. If they're a decent resident, I'd rather keep them in the house, because it's, dealing with new guys. We call them FNGs. Fucking new guys. It's so hard for them to learn. Like, some of them is hard to get. Like, holy cow, I'm in a house now where there's structure and accountability. I'm not like a feral cat anymore.
Yeah. Right.
So I like to have a really strong mix of senior residents in both houses. If we have 12 in one house, I would prefer to have 8 of those guys in that house be senior residents.
Yeah.
And then I like sprinkle in some FNGs, because
Yeah.
it's a lot easier for them to come alongside those guys.
And I agree with that wholeheartedly. The other thing I think is important is it's not what we say, but how we say it.
Yeah.
So if some of the people that I hear Demira talking about is somebody who's been with us for a while, and all of a sudden they don't want to come to the house meeting, or they're late on their curfew, or they're just living comfortably in recovery now. And my take on that is to go to them and say, I don't think you need us anymore. I think that we've done our job, and I think that you've done yours.
Yep.
And it's time for us to part ways.
Yeah, absolutely.
And not go in like you're being discharged because you're doing this, that, or the next thing. It's like,
this is your last month.
Congratulations, you graduated.
Yeah. This is your last month.
This is your last month.
Yeah.
I will be filling your bed on the 1st of April.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's the best way to really approach some of that stuff too, but, so these are all tricks of the trades that I think I like this whole F and G thing.
I like the feral cats. Yeah. Feral cats.
Yeah.
Well, we had one guy that came from out in Traverse City. A homeless encampment is called the Pines, and it's behind one of the supermarkets. He was staying out there. He'd gotten attacked by another homeless person with a machete. The guy actually had a scar on the top of his head. He had been living outside on his own for like 8 years, And so when he came to our house, and he did really well, but in the beginning, you could just see where, like, we'd say, you have to wash your dishes when you use it. You can't just put it in the sink or do it later. That was like a moment for him to realize that, I've got to clean it right now.
Yeah.
Instead of procrastinating as being part of our character defects. It was a big moment for him to learn that, like I literally caught him on the first or second day he was there. I was watching him on the camera, and he made himself a peanut butter and jelly, licked the knife, and put it in the strainer next to the sink.
Oh,
I said, what are you doing?
You did. You screamed through the camera. What are you doing?
I turned the button on the camera and said, what are you doing? He looks up. I said, you got to watch that.
Next question. Do you have it posted in your home? We use surveillance in this home so that they're aware.
Yes.
Okay, good.
I actually have a sign that says, I see you, with a smiley face under it.
Okay. And maybe have that part of their intake. We use surveillance in the home, but
Yeah.
yeah, I love
Yeah.
that. That's hilarious.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's funny.
Licked it.
Now-
Mm,
now you
put
take-
it away. Oh,
How'd that go again, Jason?
put it away.
Now you gotta wash every single set of silverware in that drawer.
Like the thing that he didn't understand it. Like he'd been living out in the woods for so long
Yeah,
that wasn't even like that. It didn't register.
no.
His
That
fork
was
was a stick in the woods, probably.
yeah, yeah.
Well, and he may have had a close head injury too, possibly.
He may have, yeah, very traumatic incident,
Yeah.
But he did really well. He ended up staying with us for like 14 months, rekindled the relationship with a mom that he'd been estranged from out in Colorado, and then moved out, and he's living out in Colorado now with her.
Oh, good.
He's got a car, he's got a license,
Really?
that recovery capital stuff.
Yeah, yeah.
Isn't that amazing?
It
I
is.
mean,
Yeah.
to hear stories still, I still, a couple times a year, I'll get something from a resident that used to be a touchstone, and hey, with a family photo.
Yeah.
He's now married, he's got a
Yep.
family, and it's just like, that's why I did it. All the
Yep.
nights I couldn't sleep or my phone's ringing off the hook. It's people like that. That's why we
Yep.
do it, right?
Yeah,
To
they're
make a
live.
difference. So
You know what? I think we could have a session on that too. What are our successes? Because so many times we don't get to see
No.
success. And it's nice to hear that. When you just share that story, I got goosebumps.
Yeah, me too.
I got goosebumps. And I don't know.
which part? The licking the silverware or the
No.
Oh, okay, just checking.
That he's made it. He's
You're blushing.
rekindled his relationship.
Ah.
And all of that. I mean, that is a real success story
Yeah.
that I think many providers, because we get tired. I did recovery housing for over 30 years. It's
Yeah.
exhausting seeing some of the things that we see.
Right.
But to see those big successes, and we have a lot of them where I used to work, it's so good to hear about them and see about them. So I think this is one we could spend a good hour just sharing some
for sure.
successes so that we all know that those successes are out there. And it does rejuvenate me. I mean, not only did I get goosebumps, I got excited, and I'm like,
Yeah.
oh, this is, I like your model anyway. So, I mean, this has been good for us, I think. And I think that we'll add that to our lessons learned, that
Right on.
success can happen, and here's how, anybody else want to share about any policies?
Any
Oh, I did have
policies
one
you've got
more.
questions about?
One more thing that I do when a guy comes back from a relapse, I make him write his obituary to get back into the house.
Oh,
How do you want your life to
Wow.
be? How do you want your life to look?
Wow. That's a wake-up call, isn't it?
Yeah.
What do you want me to give your family next time you relapse?
Right.
And just what do
Right.
you want them to read at your funeral?
Because we named Nathan's house, we named that after my wife's brother, who was one of us who he couldn't find the solution. He ended up either he nodded out and passed out and rolled into the Flint River, or he was passed out and somebody pushed him.
Yeah.
So it's like, at best, if you go back and relapse, maybe somebody will start a recovery house for you. That'll be how we honor your memory,
Yeah.
if you're lucky.
Mhm.
Or do you want to get your life together?
Yeah.
It's important though that we let the residents know that we care. We
Absolutely.
care. And I'm in your face. I'm here right now telling you, get out of bed because I care. I want you to do well, but I can't care more about your recovery than you do. Right?
That's right.
So that's really big. I can't care more about you getting better than what you do. I mean,
That's right.
maybe this isn't for you,
but yeah, Catherine, I think you're right. And I think about, like I said, I've done it a long time, and I had clients who did not like me. I mean, they did not like me. And because I was like the Catherine, when they saw me come, everybody scattered. They did not.
You mean you're like the Catherine? What does that mean? I'm offended.
And the reason for that is because I gave them tough love. I didn't give them what they wanted to hear. I was flat out open with, dude, what are you doing? You're going to die out there. You know what I mean? And love them at the same time. Point in case, we had a woman of color that was in one of our programs, and she hated me. And admittedly, by her, she was offended by my race and being the leader of this house, right? And this is her words, not mine. And my staff kept saying, you need to discharge her. She doesn't respect you. And I said, she's not using. She's not using. She's got a spot. She don't. And in groups, she wouldn't even answer a question that I ask. You know what I mean? She wouldn't give me eye contact. But I wasn't hurt by that. I didn't care by that. She was doing everything she needed to do, and she was going to be a success. And she was a success. But by the time we were done working together and she went through our program, she ended up being my grandson's godmother.
That's amazing. That's awesome.
Wow.
I mean, we became so close. She just passed of cancer not too long ago, but she went on to be a nurse at the vets VA hospital. I mean, she soared. And had I, because she didn't like me, discharged her, you know what I mean? It doesn't matter as long as they're doing what they need to do and they begin to learn life a little bit differently, you know, and we learn more about them, right? I mean, it's,
Yep.
you know, a lot can happen in a year in a program or less, you know, so.
Yeah, we
There's
tell
a
them when they
lot
come
of-
in, we tell them, hey, listen, we don't need you here. We value you here.
Yeah. Yep.
And if, you know, you've got a place as long as you're willing to do the deal,
Yeah.
you know?
But I'm always going to be honest with you.
Yeah.
Because you got enough people sugarcoating things and walking on eggshells because they don't want to get you upset.
Right.
If you're messing up, I'm going to let you know you're messing up because I
Right.
want you to do well. I want you to succeed.
Not
Why
going
are
to
you
be your
still here
enabler.
9 o'clock? You're supposed to be out of the house by 8:30. What are
Yeah.
you doing back by 3? Get out of the house. You're not supposed to be back till 4. I mean, it's important though, having that structure and having, you know, those rules are in place for a reason. And again, it's really important that you're consistent as an operator, that
Mhm.
every rule matters.
Yeah.
Well, this is awesome.
Yeah, it was
Yes.
a great meeting.
Yeah.
Great meeting.
It was really good.
What are some other things you guys want to talk about? We can talk about this at the next one too, but are there other subjects, since we got a few of you on here, that you want to talk about?
I think a subject that would be something either here in this format or even in our 3 o'clock meeting, talking about like the dangers of when you find drugs, like being
Mhm.
very careful on how you handle them, you know, because I had a situation where a kid dropped some of his pills on the back porch and come to find out they were fentanyl. And, you know,
Yeah.
I really put myself in danger when I reached down there and pick them up. Luckily, they were in a cellophane bag, but, you know, that's just like safety, like our safety as recovery operators. You know, I've had instances where guys have wanted to fight me and things like that. And I just,
Yeah.
and it's usually the smallest guy who wants to fight me, right? It's never the big guy. It's
Yeah.
always like the small
Thank
guy.
God.
Yeah, thank God.
Short
But-
person syndrome or something like
Yeah.
that, right?
But I think, you know, safety for our house managers and our recovery operators, that would be a subject to talk about, you know?
I
But
think
being
you're right.
mindful too, I mean, it's just, somebody could have pot in the house, but it's not going to be a joint sitting on the side of their bed. It could be on the
Yeah.
bottom. You unscrew their thing, and
Oh,
that's
yeah.
where they're keeping their stash. Pringles, deodorant, there's pop bottles, and all kinds of things
Tampons,
that are
even tampons.
tampons. I
Yeah.
don't think you worry about that, and I hope you don't worry about that in your house,
Well,
Jason.
Women's
No,
house.
but wall plates, you know, the wall
Oh,
sockets.
yeah.
Yeah. That's
Un-
why
under
we
their
have that
bed.
drug dog. We have that
Yep.
drug dog come through once a quarter. And
You
I'm
do?
like,
Right.
yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah. And those guys, I mean, I tell them, if you want to, you know, you can be here if you want and watch. And that dog goes up and into the top bunks and sniffs all around. And, you know, they know I'm not messing around, you know?
Do they know when the dog is coming?
No, I never
I was
tell
gonna
them.
say, you don't want to, because they could always stash their stuff under their bunkmate's bed, you know, to make it
Right,
look like
absolutely.
But then you drop everybody in the room.
Yeah,
This-
that's
that's
pretty
just
diabolical
impossible.
though, if you want to do that.
Do you mind if I ask what the charge is to have that drug dog come?
Yeah, for the two houses, they go by the square foot. So we have 3,000 square foot homes, and they charge us $700 a quarter.
And that's how many square foot?
About 6,000 feet in total between the two houses.
And how often do they come?
I have them come once a quarter.
Once
Like
a
once
quarter,
every-
and it's $700 for one time.
Yep.
Oh wow.
Absolutely love
Has they found something each time, or?
Well, he actually, when he does, he'll go in the house first and he plants. He's got cotton balls that in a mason jar that smell like marijuana or fentanyl or opiates, and he'll plant 2 or 3 of them so the dog gets a reward. But so I know that it's working. But
Yeah,
he
yeah.
hasn't found anything yet, thankfully.
Oh, good. Okay.
Um,
Yeah.
Well, awesome.
I like that. Dangerous, not just how dangerous it is to find drugs, but the dangers in dealing with people who
like
maybe
de-escalating situations, not like amping them up. Don't come back at them loud and boisterous, and put on the gorilla suit. Keep your calm.
I
You know,
like my gorilla suit.
I know, and it works for you sometimes, Catherine.
Thank you.
Well, like I said, one of the things I learned early on is not what we say, but how we say it. And those are things that we can share with other operators too. How do we handle different situations? So I think that's,
Yeah,
I
'cause
think
especially the new operators. There's a lot of new operators that have come in
yes,
recently.
yep.
But especially like when you want somebody to leave, you don't say, would you please leave? You didn't pay your rent or your program fees. Would you please leave? They're like, no. You say, you need to leave. You got 5 minutes or I'm packing you. Right.
Right.
So
Right.
without a gorilla suit.
Yep.
Thank you, everybody. What a great meeting again.
Yeah, this has been really great.
We're
Thank you
after
so
the
much.
5. But
Real quick, I have a question.
Yeah.
Is that new platform, when is that going to be mandated to our agencies to start using?
June 1 switches from Get Help. So the RecApp is available today.
Mm-hmm.
It's available on the Get Help platform. On June 1, it'll be switched to the Behave platform.
Uh-huh.
But in the interim, in the next 90 days, Kelly Darren and Ben Weiss, who's the person that was on the thing today,
Mm-hmm.
they'll help you in terms of answering any questions that you might have in your transition of use from the Get Help platform to the Behave Health platform. And the Behave
reach out
Health
to Kelly.
I know is on a scale of 1 to 10, they're an 11, compared to some of the other providers of platforms.
And Demira,
So they're all HIPAA protected. They can they can offer you to do things that will help your business side. You're not required to do that.
Well, I'm thinking in my head what makes sense for my agency, because right now we're going through a bunch of different changes. Like I said, like we no longer have the staffing grants, we have the fee for service. So we're restructuring our whole program. And I would prefer to wait to train my
Yes.
staff on the new platform
Yes.
so that they're not having to learn that among all the other things that they're learning.
Yes.
So if I can get away
100%.
with starting it on June 1st with the new one, I would prefer to be able to do that.
Yeah,
I just
that's
want to make sure I'm not in
absolutely.
trouble with that.
No, not at all.
Demira, one thing
Oops.
One thing an operator's doing in Wayne County is there's an RCO that actually has an individual there that will work with the residents. And so if there's an operator in Detroit, for example, and they can't get around to doing RecCap system themselves, this person will actually go right to their home or pick people up and go. You guys have an RCO as well? I think it would be so awesome if something like that was available. Don't you think so, Kelly? All over.
Sure.
If an
Yeah,
RCO
for
could
sure.
actually have a recovery coach there that could actually do that as well.
We actually have the recovery coaches doing the recovery capital. It's just not going onto the platform. So
Gotcha.
everybody gets a recovery capital. It's just all the restructuring and stuff. So once June 1st comes along and they have this new platform, I'm perfectly fine with, having them, teach it. I just want to get us a solid foundation right now. And then would we want to, if anybody is still currently in the house when it happens, just retroact and like fill up all that information for the recovery capital to make sure that you guys know that we've done it, with whoever's currently in the house.
Absolutely. So what it
Okay.
kind of looks like moving forward is we're going to plan on doing a community of practice with all of the operators, with Ben, with Jen, and we're just going to talk about the change,
Okay.
what the expectation is from operators, what you need for, what we need from you, what we're going to provide for you, trainings, all of those kind of things. And actually perfectly fine that you want to pause until June 1st, just because of what you stated. We don't want to train somebody and then 2 months later retrain them on a whole different system.
Yeah.
So that is perfectly within, the lines of what we're planning on doing. So we look forward to working together. So we'll definitely be looking out for, like I said, the community of practice invite. We're going to invite all the
Okay.
operators, and we're just going to focus on that. To kind of answer any questions, ease anyone's concerns, anything like that. So keep an
I
eye
mean, the
out for that.
platform looked really cool.
Yeah, it
It
does.
is.
And I wish the whole platform was free in general. Because if we could do all of our billing and accounting for our program fees, on that, that would be amazing. The one thing that I do have I think a healthy worry about is the fact that it will be a different medical record than what our clinical side uses, and if we have to pay for it,
Yeah.
they're not going to pay for it if they can't use it for their clients who are not in recovery housing.
Yeah.
So then I would have clinicians on two different platforms. And I don't know if that's going, so that'd be like my one of my concerns that I have of it now. But I'm sure like you guys will be working out like kinks and stuff like that.
Absolutely. And it is a holistic electronic medical record. So it may be that maybe your clinical folks come over and use Behave,
Uh-huh.
and they move from the system that they're using. Everybody's on one system. You pay, they're not included because this is for residential, but I'm sure you're already paying for electronic, your
Mm-hmm.
records elsewhere. So
Yeah.
that's definitely something that you can talk to Ben and bring up at our community of practice.
Okay.
Because that's something that would be effective is just to kind of get everything on one platform since you're
Yeah.
already paying for, the treatment, etc., and your clinicians. And then it does have that billing factor. I mean, you can save a whole lot of money as far as getting your residential free and having everybody on the same platform too. So lots of ways to work things out and customize things for how your operations are going to work. So if you think of anything, if you want, answered before we meet, shoot me an email. Otherwise, write them, jot them down, and ask those questions once we all get together too.
Whose
Absolutely.
birthday is it, Glennis? Is it your birthday? You're muted.
Happy birthday.
Thank you.
Your
That's very
birthday?
nice. Yeah,
I'll
isn't
sing
that
happy
nice?
birthday to
Look,
you tomorrow.
look at all that.
Beautiful.
Isn't that
Nice.
pretty?
Happy
Somebody
birthday.
they want me healthy. I told the
Right.
big, tall, nice looking man that came to the door, I wish they were from him, but okay.
Oh, you're 49 again, right?
I am, yes. How
Congratulations.
wonderful, huh?
Happy 49.
My dog seems to be pretty happy about this gift too.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much.
Thank
Have a great
you.
day.
Have a
Bye-bye.
good
you.
one.
Bye.